"You're fired," the millionaire's wife said coldly in the center of the grand hall, believing nobody important was listening. But standing halfway down the staircase, her husband had already stopped walking, and the moment he heard the trembling silence of the woman being humiliated below, he realized something inside that house was far more broken than he had ever imagined. Before we begin, take 1 second to subscribe and leave a like if you enjoy emotional stories filled with truth, human struggles, and unforgettable moments. Every click helps this channel continue bringing stories that stay with you long after they end. "I'm firing you," Vanessa Caldwell said sharply in the middle of the marble hall, her voice echoing through the mansion without hesitation. Angela Brooks kept her hands clasped tightly in front of her cleaning uniform so they would not shake. Her posture remained straight even as the humiliation settled heavily across the room. At the top of the staircase, "Ethan?" Caldwell stopped moving the instant he understood that what he was hearing was not just another domestic disagreement. He stood still for 1 second longer. Then he slowly stepped down a single stair. Vanessa noticed him almost immediately. For the first time since raising her voice, part of her confidence faltered. Still, she quickly adjusted her shoulders, forcing calm back into her expression. "I'm just handling an internal issue," she said smoothly. "Nothing that needs your attention." But Ethan continued descending the stairs until he reached the polished floor below. His eyes moved first to his wife, then toward Angela, and what he saw in the housekeeper's face disturbed him more than the argument itself. It was not anger. It was the exhausted tension of someone who had spent years swallowing disrespect quietly. "If it concerns my house," Ethan said calmly, "then it concerns me." Vanessa inhaled slowly. "She's crossing boundaries," she replied, "going through things that don't belong to her, asking questions that are completely inappropriate for someone in her position. I'd rather end this situation now before it gets worse." Angela finally lifted her eyes, though her voice stayed careful and restrained. "I didn't go through anything, sir. I found a folder on the floor in the office. When I picked it up, I saw documents with the foundation's name on them." Vanessa immediately turned toward her. "She's trying to justify herself." Ethan frowned slightly. The Caldwell Foundation was not just another charity project. His father had built it decades earlier to fund vocational education programs and rehabilitation treatments for low-income families across the state. Out of everything connected to the family name, it was the one thing Ethan truly respected. And ever since marrying Vanessa, he had trusted her completely with its social operations. "What document?" he asked quietly. Angela hesitated for only a moment, not because she was afraid, because she seemed to weigh every word carefully before speaking. "A payment report, sir. The amounts were too high, and some of the names didn't match the reports that occasionally come through the front desk for signatures." Vanessa stepped forward instantly. "She has absolutely no training to interpret financial documents." Angela did not retreat. "I don't need financial training to notice people receiving money who aren't even listed in the foundation records." The silence that followed felt heavier than shouting. Ethan knew his wife well enough to recognize the tone she used whenever she wanted to overpower someone through pressure alone. But he also recognized something else, the quiet honesty of someone who was speaking carefully because they already expected not to be believed. Finally, Ethan turned toward Angela. "Please wait in the library for a few minutes." Vanessa reacted immediately. "You're actually listening to this?" Ethan answered without raising his voice. "I'm verifying it." Angela nodded once and quietly walked away without looking at either of them again. The moment she disappeared down the hallway, Vanessa lowered her tone and changed strategies completely. "She's been behaving inappropriately for months," she said. "Too curious, too comfortable around private family matters. People like that become dangerous inside a house like this." Ethan listened silently, but the more she spoke, the more he felt as if every sentence had been rehearsed long before today. "You want to fire her because she found a folder on the floor?" he finally asked. "I want to fire her because I don't trust her anymore. And I want to understand why you're in such a hurry," Ethan replied. For the first time, Vanessa failed to answer immediately. Their marriage had not been peaceful for a very long time. It still functioned on appearances, formal dinners, public events, carefully planned vacations, polite conversations in rooms already emotionally empty, and maybe because of that. Routine. Vanessa still believed Ethan would behave the same way he always had. He would hear very little, ask even less, and allow everything to disappear quietly. But that morning, something had changed. Maybe it was the way Angela had defended her dignity without begging. Maybe it was the foundation's name appearing in the middle of a situation that suddenly felt far too serious to ignore. "Bring me the folder," Ethan said. Vanessa crossed her arms. "It's not here." "Then let's go to the office." The walk there felt short and unbearably heavy. When Vanessa opened the main drawer of the desk, she revealed neatly organized papers, vendor invoices, fundraising summaries, event contracts, expense spreadsheets. Ethan reviewed them carefully, but the document Angela described was missing. "Where's the individual payment sheet?" he asked. "It's probably with the accountant." "The accountant doesn't work Sundays," Ethan replied immediately. Vanessa fell silent again, and in that exact moment, Ethan's suspicion stopped being vague. When he entered the library a few minutes later, Angela was standing beside the bookshelf, waiting quietly. Her uniform remained perfectly neat, her hair was tightly tied back, and her expression carried the calm determination of someone who had already accepted she might lose her job simply for telling the truth. Ethan closed the door behind him but kept a respectful distance. "If there was disrespect toward you today," he said first, "I apologize." Angela looked surprised by the apology, but she did not soften because of it. "I just want to leave here with my name clean, sir." That sentence hit him directly. Most people accustomed to humiliation accepted any compromise simply to end embarrassment quickly. But Angela did not want favors. She wanted respect. "Did you see anything else besides the payment sheet?" Ethan asked. He nodded slowly. "I saw donation envelopes prepared for events that had nothing to do with scholarships or treatment. Programs." Ethan gestured for her to continue. And carefully, step by step, Angela explained exactly what had happened that morning. She had entered the office early to clean, found the folder beside the desk, picked up the papers that had fallen onto the floor, and while reorganizing them, noticed the foundation's name. She did not deny reading the documents. She did not try to appear innocent or perfect. She simply spoke with precision. "I recognize the foundation because my younger sister applied for a scholarship last year," she explained quietly. She was told the program had been suspended because of budget limitations. Ethan felt something tighten inside his chest. The program should never have been suspended. Funding had already been approved for years. "My sister almost dropped out because of that," Angela continued. "We barely managed to keep paying tuition until she found an internship." Ethan stayed silent for several seconds, then finally asked, "Why didn't you come directly to me?" This time Angela held his gaze fully for the first time since entering the room. "Because people like me learn very young that powerful men don't always want to hear what disturbs the peace inside their homes." The sentence was simple, honest, and Ethan did not feel offended by it because deep down he knew she was right. For years, he had buried himself inside contracts, acquisitions, business expansions, and financial meetings while leaving the mansion, the foundation, and the family's social image entirely in Vanessa's hands. Now a housekeeper stood in front of him saying calmly what nobody else in his world had ever dared to say. His comfort had been built on the silence of others. That same afternoon, instead of dismissing the situation, Ethan contacted the company's financial director and ordered a private audit of the Caldwell Foundation. He also temporarily froze all non-essential transfers until a complete review could be finished. Vanessa learned about the decision before dinner. She entered his office carrying the same calculated calm she always used whenever she sensed control slipping away. "You're making a serious decision based on the word of an employee," she said. "I'm making a decision based on the answers you failed to give me," Ethan replied. Vanessa tried changing directions immediately. She reminded him of every charity gala she had organized, every magazine feature praising her leadership, every wealthy donor who contributed because of her public image. Ethan listened until she finished. "If everything is clean," he finally said, "the audit will confirm it. And if it isn't, then I'd rather discover it now." Vanessa stared at him for several seconds before speaking again. "You're defending her awfully hard." For the first time in years, Ethan answered his wife with complete clarity. "Today I'm defending a process. Everything else depends on what I find." The following morning, word about the financial freeze had already spread among the mansion staff. Angela noticed it immediately. Conversations lowered when she walked by. Some employees suddenly became overly polite, hoping to gather information. Others treated her like someone dangerous. One woman even asked quietly whether she planned on staying in the house after creating all this confusion. Angela endured everything without arguing. She finished her shift silently, gathered her supplies, signed her checkout form, and left for the bus stop carrying the heavy feeling that perhaps she had made the biggest mistake of her life by opening her mouth. When the bus finally turned the corner, a black car stopped several feet ahead. Ethan stepped out alone. No driver, no formal posture, no unnecessary closeness. "I don't want to interrupt your evening," he said carefully. "I just need 2 minutes." Angela hesitated before nodding once. Ethan handed her a sealed envelope. Inside was an official company document temporarily suspending any disciplinary action against her until the investigation concluded. It carried both his signature and the corporation's legal authorization. "Your job won't be used as a threat," he said. Angela read the paper twice. "Thank you." Even her gratitude sounded cautious, as though she still had not decided whether he could truly be trusted. "My sister thinks rich people solve everything with money," she said while placing the document back into the envelope. "And what do you think?" Ethan asked. "I think they solve things with character," she answered quietly. "We'll see who's right." For the first time that entire day, Ethan nearly smiled. "Do you always talk like this? When I'm exhausted?" "Yes." "And today you're exhausted?" Angela looked at him directly. "Today I'm at my limit." Ethan nodded slowly, respecting the weight behind the answer instead of trying to soften it. "Then I won't take more of your time." Angela turned toward the bus stop, then paused halfway. "If more people approach me, because of her?" she asked carefully. "Can I contact legal directly?" "You can," Ethan answered immediately. "And you should." She gave a short nod before boarding the bus. Ethan remained standing there watching the vehicle disappear into traffic, not because of attraction, not yet, but because for the first time in years, a business decision no longer felt abstract to him. It had a face now, a name, a real consequence. The following days transformed both of their routines completely. For Ethan, the mornings started earlier and ended much later. Financial records, hidden transfers, inflated event contracts, consulting agreements with no verified services, and suspicious vendor payments slowly revealed something much larger than isolated mistakes. It was a system, a carefully organized one, and many of the companies receiving foundation money were connected directly to people close to Vanessa. For Angela, life became even harder. Besides working at the mansion, she cleaned two smaller office buildings downtown. At night, she attended accounting classes at a private college, and when she finally got home, she still helped her younger sister Madison with internship reports and assignments. She never explained all of this to Ethan directly. He discovered it slowly through small moments. When she arrived late one afternoon because she had come from another cleaning shift. When he noticed accounting textbooks inside her bag. When she casually mentioned there were only a few tuition payments left before her sister graduated. There was something deeply disciplined about the way Angela lives. Not coldness, not bitterness. Discipline. And Ethan found himself respecting that more than anything else. During the first official legal interview, Angela spoke clearly and precisely. She listed dates, repeated names she remembered seeing, and carefully described the documents without exaggeration. At one point, one of the attorneys suggested simplifying her statement by describing the situation as a possible misunderstanding caused by misinterpretation. Angela interrupted politely but firmly. "I'd be mistaken if I talked about things I didn't see," she said. "I'm only talking about what I saw." Ethan observed the entire exchange silently, and for the first time he realized she carried more natural presence than many executives sitting inside his boardrooms every day. After the meeting ended, he offered to drive her to the station. Angela refused immediately. "I don't want people talking." "You're right," Ethan answered. The fact that he did not insist surprised her more than the offer itself. It was the first moment she considered that maybe there was a difference between genuine respect and kindness used as power. But the following week brought a bigger problem. An antique family bracelet disappeared from Vanessa's dressing room, and before any investigation even began, Angela's name quietly started circulating among the staff. There was no public accusation, no shouting, no dramatic confrontation, but the damage spread quickly anyway. The house manager stopped making eye contact with her. Two co-workers suddenly distanced themselves. Someone even suggested she should resign before things became worse. When Ethan learned what was happening, he immediately requested inventory reports, staff access logs, and security footage. Less than 2 hours later, the truth appeared. The bracelet had been sent for restoration days earlier under Vanessa's signed authorization. That should have ended everything, but it did not erase what had already been planted against Angela. At the end of her shift, she placed a resignation letter on the service kitchen table. "I'm not staying somewhere my name can be used like this whenever it's convenient." Ethan read the paper slowly while she stood across from him, and inside his own home he felt something he had not felt in years. Shame. "You don't need to leave," he said quietly. "I know I don't," Angela answered. "I just don't want to stay. I can fix this." "You can fix the paperwork," she replied. "The rest takes longer." There was no bitterness in her voice, only exhaustion and honesty strong enough to leave him without easy arguments. Finally, Ethan asked the only question that felt fair. What do you need so you don't leave here damaged? Angela thought for several seconds. A formal statement confirming I was never investigated for theft. A recommendation letter. And full. Payment for everything owed. You'll have it today. Then she surprised him. And I want my sister to be allowed to apply for the scholarship program again when the foundation reopens. No favors, no special treatment, just merit. Ethan folded the resignation letter slowly. If I fix the foundation correctly, he said, nobody deserving help will lose opportunities because of missing money ever again. Angela held his gaze longer than usual. If you really do that, she answered softly, you'll already be better than most people who ever made promises to us. And that was the moment their story stopped being only about a wealthy employer and a housekeeper trapped inside the injustice of a rich household. Something else had begun growing between them, quietly, carefully, but undeniably. After leaving the mansion, Angela only returned to the company headquarters whenever the legal department requested additional testimony. And during those meetings, she slowly began seeing a completely different version of Ethan Caldwell. No longer the distant man silently observing everything from the staircase above. Now he listened before speaking, read every page carefully before signing, corrected members of his own executive team whenever they became arrogant or careless. He also began appearing unexpectedly inside departments he had previously known only through reports and numbers. One evening, after another long legal meeting, Ethan found Angela leaving the building carrying a heavy backpack over one shoulder. She looked exhausted, like someone who still had half her day ahead of her. You're still going to class? He asked. Angela adjusted the strap on her shoulder. After class, I'm cleaning another office downtown for extra weekend pay. Ethan stared at her for a second. When do you sleep? A tired smile crossed her face. When life allows it. He hesitated before speaking again because by then he already understood something important. Every careless sentence would immediately sound to her either like sincere help or control. I have a meeting near your college, he said carefully. If it makes you uncomfortable, ignore the offer, but I can drive you there. Angela studied him for a moment. There was no savior complex in his voice, no superiority, no hidden pressure disguised as kindness, just a simple offer. If it doesn't change your route, she finally answered, I'll accept. Inside the car, they spoke for the first time without lawyers, investigations, or accusations standing between them. Angela explained that she had worked since she was 16 years old, that after losing their mother, responsibility stopped feeling temporary and simply became part of her identity. She had learned early never to ask for more than necessary. Ethan admitted something in return. His father had been deeply respected publicly but emotionally distant at home. Ethan learned how to lead companies long before learning how to truly listen to people. For years, he had mistaken silence for stability. Neither of them tried turning the conversation emotional. No dramatic confessions, no flirtation. But when Ethan stopped outside her college and Angela stepped out of the car, both already understood something rare existed between them. Thanks for the ride, she said. Thanks for being honest, he answered. Angela closed the door, took several steps toward campus, then turned back unexpectedly. You seem better when you stop acting like you own Sue, the world. Ethan laughed quietly. I'll take that as advice. Take it as a warning. That was the moment he realized something clearly, without romantic fantasy or impulsive emotion. He admired her, deeply. But while those feelings slowly grew, the investigation became even darker. The audit uncovered electronic approvals made after hours from inside the foundation offices, suspicious chains of vendor payments, and one company in particular that immediately attracted compliance investigators. The business had been created only months earlier. No real history, no significant employees. Yet it had received massive amounts of foundation money. And when legal investigators traced ownership records, they discovered the registered partner was one of Vanessa's former assistants. That was when Ethan made the decision he had postponed for far too long. He filed for divorce, not because of jealousy, not revenge, not because of Angela, but because he finally accepted something he should have. Admitted years earlier, there was no partnership left inside his marriage, no trust, no shared purpose. Vanessa received the news with frightening calm. So this is really happening? She asked coldly. You're destroying your family because of an audit and the accusations of a former employee? Ethan answered without anger. I'm ending a marriage that stopped existing a long time ago, and I'm protecting the foundation that carries my father's name. Vanessa stepped closer to the desk. You think you understand everything now? She said quietly, but you still don't know who you're dealing with. The sentence stayed with him long after she left the room, because it did not sound emotional. It sounded like a warning. That same night, while leaving the corporate building, Ethan noticed a black vehicle parked too long outside the side entrance. Nothing happened. No confrontation, no pursuit. Still, the feeling remained. Vanessa was not finished. Instead of reacting emotionally, Ethan immediately contacted legal and ordered additional protection around all audit records and internal files. The next afternoon, Angela received a phone call from an unknown number. The woman speaking sounded polite, educated, controlled. She claimed to represent family attorneys and requested a private meeting to discuss a reasonable resolution. Angela ended the call immediately. Then she contacted Ethan. "Don't go anywhere alone," he told her. There was a brief silence before she answered. "I don't need you protecting me." "I know," Ethan replied calmly. "I'm asking you to be careful." Angela exhaled softly on the other end of the line. For once, her voice sounded less defensive. "Fine, then you be careful too," she said, because I think she finally understands you're not backing down. Hours later, the official proposal arrived through legal channels. A generous financial settlement, a confidentiality agreement, professional recommendations. And in exchange, Angela would formally declare that she had misunderstood the documents she found. She reviewed the offer inside the legal office, then slowly pushed the papers back across the table. "My name isn't for sale." Ethan watched her carefully from the opposite side of the room. Her eyes were shining, not from fear, from contained anger. "You don't have to continue this," he said quietly, after the attorneys stepped outside. "Yes," Angela answered immediately. "I do." She folded her arms tightly. "If I accept this, tomorrow they'll do the same thing to someone else." And at that exact moment, Ethan understood that what he felt for her had already moved far beyond admiration. It was not fascination with someone outside his world, not emotional dependency, not attraction created by crisis. It was profound respect for a woman who had every reason to surrender, and still chose honesty because she could not live with herself otherwise. When the meeting ended, Ethan walked beside her into the hallway. "Angela," he turned, "you don't need to answer this today, or tomorrow, but I need to say something clearly." She waited silently. "What I feel for you isn't pity, it is an impulse, and it has nothing to do with the life I had before all this." Angela held his eyes steadily. "I know the difference between pity and respect, sir." Ethan paused. "Then stop calling me sir." For several seconds, Angela said nothing, as if even using his first name carried weight now. Finally, she nodded once. "All right, Ethan." The way she said his name changed something instantly between them. Not dramatically, not recklessly, but permanently. Nothing had been resolved yet. The investigation remained dangerous. The divorce continued. Vanessa still had influence. But from that moment forward, both of them understood the truth. Whatever existed between them was real, and neither of them wanted to lie about it anymore. Over the following weeks, the investigation intensified. The audit grew stronger. The divorce proceedings advanced quietly through the courts, and Vanessa slowly began losing influence inside the foundation's board of directors. Still, one critical problem remained unresolved. There was no direct proof connecting the fraudulent transfers specifically to her personal orders. The contracts could still be blamed on the intermediaries. The electronic signatures alone were not enough to fully establish responsibility. Ethan understood that clearly, and unlike before, he no longer hid difficult truths from Angela. One rainy evening, long after her classes had ended, the two of them met inside a reserved conference room at the administrative building to review documents again. Angela slipped off her shoes for a brief second beneath the table and carefully rubbed her aching ankle. "If I had known picking up that folder would drag me this far into your world," she muttered tiredly, "I would have taken a deep breath before opening it." Across from her, Ethan closed one of the audit files. "If I had been paying attention sooner," he answered quietly, "you wouldn't have gone through half of this." Angela looked up immediately. "Don't put all of it on yourself." She made her choices. Ethan stayed silent for several seconds before finally speaking again, and my choice was not seeing any of it. For the first time, Angela stood and walked toward the window overlooking the city lights below. She remained there for a moment before answering softly. "Some people don't see because they don't want to." Ethan frowned slightly. "And my case?" Angela turned halfway toward him. "Worse?" He looked genuinely surprised. "You trusted someone who didn't deserve it," she explained calmly. "And honest people paid the price for that trust. That hurts more because it could have been prevented." Her honesty never sounded cruel, only organized, direct, responsible. And that was exactly why Ethan trusted her more every day. He stood as well, though he kept a respectful distance between them. And even after all this, he said quietly, "You're still here." Angela crossed her arms lightly. "I'm here because my sister deserves to see the truth win at least once." Ethan stared at her for a long moment, then finally allowed himself complete honesty. "And I'm here because I can't separate my responsibility from what I feel when I think about you anymore." There was no dramatic pause after the confession, no rushed movement, no attempt to force emotion into the moment. Angela simply lowered her eyes briefly before answering with the same maturity he had already come to expect from her. "If this is real," she said softly, "it'll survive until all of this is over. If it isn't, I'd rather not start something the wrong way." Ethan nodded immediately. "It's real." Angela looked at him again carefully, as if searching for inconsistency in his face. Then she spoke quietly. "Then do something for me. Anything. Finish this the right way first." "I will." Angela slipped her shoes back on and reached for her bag, preparing to leave. But just before reaching the door, she stopped suddenly. Something in her expression had changed. Not fear, decision. "There's something I never told you," she admitted slowly. "At first I thought what I saw that day would be enough." Ethan straightened instantly. "What is it?" Angela placed one hand inside her bag but paused before opening the zipper completely. "If you really want to prove Vanessa directed everything," she said carefully, "I kept the original folder before it went back to the office. The room went completely still, and inside it," Angela continued quietly, "is the document you're missing." Slowly, she removed a worn envelope from her bag and placed it carefully on the table between them. Ethan did not touch it immediately. Instead, he looked at her first, as though realizing the weight she had carried alone this entire time. Finally, he opened the envelope. Inside were the complete payment records, to transfer, authorizations signed physically by Vanessa, handwritten notes beside vendor names, event schedules with manipulated figures, and one final sheet that affected Ethan more than anything else, a plain page with no official letterhead. But the handwriting belonged unmistakably to Vanessa. It listed which individuals should receive priority payments, which people needed to remain silent, and which reports could safely be presented to the board without raising unnecessary questions. Angela watched him silently from across the table. "I kept it because I thought nobody would believe me otherwise," she admitted. Then she looked down briefly. "Afterward, I got scared. I thought if I brought it forward too late, it would look like I'd hidden it for personal reasons." Ethan reviewed the documents again carefully before lifting his eyes toward her. "You didn't keep this for personal gain." Angela stayed quiet. "You kept it because you knew one day someone might try to erase the truth. For the first time since this entire nightmare began, part of the tension inside her face finally loosened. I just didn't want the truth depending on the goodwill of people who always had louder voices than mine." Ethan immediately photographed every page using his corporate phone. Then he contacted the head of legal and the compliance director personally, ordering both of them upstairs immediately without informing anyone else. When the call ended, he looked back at Angela. "From this moment on," he said firmly, "you're not carrying this alone anymore." Angela slowly sat back in her chair, and for the first time since Ethan had met her, he saw exhaustion break through her composure completely. "I was running out of strength," she admitted quietly. "Then let me carry part of this with you." This time she did not argue, did not protect herself behind caution. She simply accepted it. Less than 40 minutes later, the documents had been officially registered, photographed, reviewed, and connected directly to the ongoing audit investigation. The legal department sealed the room. Copies were secured, statements were recorded carefully. No unnecessary noise, no leaks, because everyone understood that warning Vanessa too early could still be dangerous. Angela gave another detailed testimony, explaining exactly when she found the folder and why she had kept the documents hidden until she was certain someone was truly willing to investigate. She never tried portraying herself as heroic, only honest. By the time the meeting ended, it was already after 10 at night. Ethan walked beside her through the nearly empty lobby downstairs. "Is someone waiting for you at home?" he asked. "My sister," Angela replied softly. She notices immediately when something sounds different in my voice. "Let me drive you." Angela hesitated before nodding. "Tonight I'll accept. If I take the bus this late, Madison's going to know something happened." Inside the car, the first few minutes passed in silence. Not uncomfortable silence. The silence of two people emotionally exhausted after crossing an important line together. Finally, Angela spoke first. "I thought you'd be angry that I kept the documents hidden." Ethan kept his eyes on the road. "I was angry," he admitted. Angela looked toward him carefully. At what? At imagining how badly life must have taught you not to trust anyone before finally trusting me. Angela leaned her head back against the seat. I learned young that trusting too quickly becomes expensive. And trusting me? He thought quietly for several seconds. At first it was expensive, she answered honestly. After that, it started becoming worth it. Ethan glanced toward her briefly, then back toward the road. I'm going to make it worth much more than this. Angela did not romanticize the sentence, did not soften the seriousness of the situation. Instead, she asked the question that truly mattered. Are you really prepared to go all the way with this, even knowing it'll affect your name, your divorce, the foundation, everything? Ethan answered immediately. I'm not protecting my name anymore. He tightened his hands slightly around the steering wheel. I'm protecting what's right. Angela said nothing after that, but the small movement of her fingers tightening around the strap of her bag told him the answer had reached exactly where it needed to. The reaction came faster than anyone expected. Before 9 the next morning, Vanessa arrived at the corporate building without notice and walked directly into Ethan's office, where legal advisors and compliance officers were already waiting. The moment her eyes landed on the documents spread across the conference table, she understood immediately that something had changed. Her expression remained composed, but for one brief second, the calculation disappeared from her eyes. I see we've decided to accelerate things, she said coldly. The head attorney answered professionally. A new stage of the audit requires immediate clarification. Vanessa gave a faint smile. Clarification? Or performance? Ethan never raised his voice, never tried using authority theatrically. He simply slid one of the copied documents across the table towards her. Do you recognize this? Vanessa looked at the page carefully before pushing it aside. One isolated signature proves nothing. My assistants prepared dozens of authorizations every week. Social management requires flexibility. Then, the compliance director presented the bank connections, overlapping vendor contracts, and handwritten prioritization sheet recovered from the folder. For the first time, Vanessa took longer to answer. This is ridiculous, she finally said. You're building a narrative. Angela was not inside the room that morning under legal recommendation, but her name surfaced almost immediately once Vanessa realized where the new evidence had originated. Of course this came from her, she snapped. A resentful former employee desperate for attention. Enough. Ethan's interruption cut sharply through the room. A short silence followed. Do not use her name to distract from what you did. Vanessa stared at him as if she barely recognized the man sitting in front of her anymore. You really want to destroy everything? I wasn't the one stealing resources from people who needed them, Ethan answered quietly. And I wasn't the one trying to ruin an innocent woman's reputation inside my own home. The legal department formally informed Vanessa that effective immediately she was removed from all operational involvement with the foundation and that the evidence would be forwarded to the appropriate authorities for full investigation. She still tried negotiating, claimed public exposure would damage donors, compromise future campaigns, stain the Caldwell family legacy, but Ethan answered with a clarity he had not used with her in years. The truth is not what damages my family's name. His eyes stayed fixed on hers. What damages it is what you did. Vanessa left without screaming, without slamming doors, without dramatic scenes. But for the first time since all of this began, Ethan sensed something important. He understood she had truly lost control. Meanwhile, Angela followed the developments quietly from a distance. Because regardless of investigations and corporate scandals, her real life still demanded the same exhausting routine as always. Work, classes, bills, helping Madison. Trying not to lose herself inside a problem far larger than she had ever imagined. One evening, sitting at the tiny kitchen table inside the apartment she shared with her sister, Angela finally explained everything from the beginning. Madison listened silently until the entire story ended. Then she leaned back slowly in her chair. You know this is going to change your life, right? Angela gave a tired half smile. I'm just trying to stop it from getting worse. Madison shook her head immediately. No, you still don't understand. Angela looked at her. You did something people with degrees, titles, money, and important last names were too afraid to do. Angela poured coffee for both of them and stared quietly at the steam rising from the cups. Fear and courage walked together the whole time, she admitted. Yeah, Madison answered softly. But you walked anyway? The conversation stayed with Angela all night. 3 days later, the forensic review officially confirmed the authenticity of the signatures, payment records, and handwritten notes. The board of directors held an emergency meeting. Vanessa was permanently removed, a temporary administration was approved, and the suspended scholarship programs would begin reopening gradually. Ethan personally ensured the board records included a complete restructuring of the scholarship review system and rehabilitation programs, not as a personal favor, but as institutional correction. When the meeting finally ended, the chairman quietly approached Ethan in the hallway. "You prevented something much worse from happening." Ethan thanked him politely, but deep down he knew the statement was incomplete. The thing that truly prevented disaster was not only his decision, it was the courage of a woman cleaning floors while powerful people cleaned their consciences with silence. That same week, Ethan contacted Angela for the first time outside legal matters. No urgency, no documents, no investigations. He waited outside her college campus after class, remaining near the gate so she would not feel pressured. When Angela spotted him, surprise crossed her face instantly. "Did something happen?" "Yes," Ethan answered. "This time it's good." They walked together to a small diner near the corner and sat at a quiet booth in the back. Ethan explained that the forensic review had validated the evidence completely. The board approved the restructuring, and Madison would be able to apply, again for the vocational scholarship program under the new transparent process. Angela listened carefully, but the moment the reality of the news settled fully inside her, her eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. "My sister deserves this so much," she whispered. "I know," Ethan answered softly. "And you deserve to finally see something good happen after carrying everything alone for so long." Angela laughed nervously while wiping quickly beneath her eyes. "I promised myself I wasn't going to cry in front of you again." "You never promised me that." She looked up at him. "Good." The silence that followed felt warm, adult, full of meaning without needing decoration. Finally, Angela asked quietly, "And you? How are you?" Ethan considered the question honestly. "Tired," he admitted. "Relieved in some ways. I'm feeling like I'm seeing my own life clearly for the first time." "Is that good?" "I think so. Even when it hurts." Angela rested one hand lightly on the table near his. "Not touching, just close enough. Some pain puts things back in order." Ethan smiled softly. "You always say very little and somehow still say exactly the right thing." Angela's lips curved slightly. "It's part of my charm." And in that moment, Ethan noticed another side of her that had previously appeared only briefly between exhaustion and responsibility. There was strength, discipline, maturity, but also intelligence, dry humor, warmth, a quiet femininity that never needed attention to exist. Before leaving the diner, Ethan spoke carefully. "I still want to continue the conversation we started." Angela knew exactly which conversation he meant. "So do I," she admitted. "But there's still one thing left unfinished. The divorce." He nodded. "And you finishing all of this completely. No hidden pieces." "I will." Angela stood, gathering her books. Then she looked directly at him with calm sincerity. "When it's finally over, come find me without titles, without problems, and without anything left to solve." Ethan held her gaze steadily. "I will." And for the first time, when they walked away from each other, what remained between them was not only respect anymore, it was expectation. Clean, hopeful, real. The divorce process moved forward quietly. No public scandals, no televised disputes, no desperate attempts to preserve appearances. Ethan refused to turn private pain into public spectacle. Vanessa, already weakened by the investigation and mounting evidence, eventually chose negotiation over prolonging a battle she was clearly losing. Still, there were difficult moments. She attempted to maintain support from social circles and lifestyle magazines, claiming emotional exhaustion and insisting the entire situation had been exaggerated by internal misunderstandings. It no longer worked. The foundation board removed her completely from all decision-making authority. Longtime donors demanded financial reviews, and the new administration began publishing monthly transparency reports for the first time in years. Simple changes, but powerful ones. For Ethan, that phase became less about victory and more about repair. He personally visited rehabilitation centers connected to the foundation, spoke with families whose support programs had been interrupted, listened to stories that left him sitting silently for hours afterward. There was no room for pride in any of it. Part of the damage existed precisely because he had failed to notice what was happening sooner. During one of those visits, Ethan invited Angela to accompany a small review team as an informal observer. She refused immediately. "I don't want people saying I'm involved because of you. You're involved because you told the truth," he answered. Angela looked out the passenger window quietly for a moment before replying. "If I had let go of the truth back then, I never would have respected myself again." Ethan turned slightly toward her. That's why I started admiring you. Angela slowly looked back at him. Started? It began with your courage, he admitted calmly. Then your honesty. Now, it's everything. This time she did not answer immediately, because emotion existed there now, but so did caution. I waited my whole life to hear someone speak like that without wanting ownership afterward, she confessed quietly. And I spent years surrounded by people who spoke beautifully while hiding the truth, Ethan replied. The silence that followed confirmed. Something between them neither of them needed to define out loud anymore. 2 weeks later, the scholarship program officially reopened. Madison completed the application process through blind evaluations, technical reviews, and independent interviews without ever using Angela's name or situation as leverage. Angela nearly became sick from anxiety waiting for the results, but she pretended calm for her sister's sake until the final moment. When the acceptance email arrived, Madison read it once, then again, then suddenly burst into tears and laughter at the same time. I got in, she whispered breathlessly. Angela grabbed the laptop and reread every line herself before finally allowing emotion to overcome restraint. She hugged her sister tightly, not because the scholarship solved everything, but because it proved something important. The fight had mattered. That same night, Angela received a short message from Ethan. I heard about Madison. May I stop by to congratulate her? Angela showed the phone screen to her sister immediately. Madison answered before Angela could. If you say no, I'm going downstairs myself. 30 minutes later, Ethan arrived carrying a simple bakery box filled with pastries from a local neighborhood shop. No expensive gifts, no performance. The apartment welcomed him with warmth instead of luxury. Everything inside the small space reflected effort, discipline, and real life. Madison liked him instantly, though she clearly enjoyed teasing him even more. So, she said while crossing her arms dramatically, you're the reason my sister hasn't slept properly in months? Angela shot her a warning look. Ethan smiled quietly. I'm hoping for better reasons now. The conversation flowed far easier than Angela expected. Ethan listened carefully while Madison talked about classes, internship opportunities, and the redesigned scholarship structure. And before leaving, he made one thing perfectly clear. She earned this herself. Nobody opened doors for her. After Madison stepped away to answer a phone call, Ethan and Angela finally found themselves alone for several minutes inside the quiet apartment. You fit here, he said softly while looking around. Angela raised one eyebrow. Because it's small? No, Ethan answered immediately. Because everything here feels honest? Angela studied him silently. By then, she no longer had the strength or desire to pretend distance constantly. You've changed a lot. Ethan gave a faint smile. I started changing. I'm still learning. Angela stepped slightly closer. That's the version of people I trust. The unfinished ones? The honest ones. Ethan laughed quietly. Then maybe I still have a chance. Angela surprised him by not turning the moment into a joke. You do. Only a few days later, the divorce became official. No dramatic reconciliation. No hidden meetings. No second chances. When Ethan left the courthouse, he did not return to the office. Instead, he drove directly to the mansion, specifically to the grand staircase overlooking the marble hall, the exact place where he had first heard Vanessa humiliating Angela weeks earlier. He stood there silently for several moments, and finally understood something with complete clarity. That room had marked the ending of one life and the beginning of another, not because of wealth, not because of scandal, but because for the first time in years, Ruth had entered a place built entirely on appearance. That same afternoon, Ethan messaged Angela asking if they could meet somewhere quiet. No urgency, no legal discussions, no unresolved problems. Angela suggested a peaceful park near her college after classes ended. When Ethan arrived, she was already seated on a bench with her bag beside her and her hair still tied back in the practical style she always wore after long days. She stood when she saw him, and for the first time the weight that once existed between them was gone. There was history now, respect, choice. So, Angela asked softly, did you finish everything completely? Ethan nodded once. No hidden pieces left. Angela studied him carefully, almost as if verifying the truth internally before accepting it. And now, Ethan stepped closer. Not aggressively, not hesitantly, just honestly. Now I want to know you without fear, without titles, without unequal position standing between us. Angela held his gaze, then asked the final question she needed answered. Can you really care about someone? Who's going to disagree with you, correct you, and refuse to stand in a smaller place beside you? Ethan answered immediately. That's exactly why I care about you. For the first time since they met, Angela's smile appeared without defense. small, tired, beautiful. Then now, she said softly, you can finally take me to dinner. Ethan smiled back. Somewhere simple, somewhere honest. Deal. That was the first time he held her hand. Not impulsively, not like victory, not like rescue, but like the beginning of something earned properly. Angela did not pull away. She did not turn the moment into something bigger than it needed to be either. Because after everything they had survived, that quiet contact alone already meant enough. The months that followed proved that what had begun between Ethan and Angela was not fragile fantasy born from crisis. It survived reality. The Caldwell Foundation was completely reorganized under independent supervision, public financial reporting, transparent scholarship selection, and restored rehabilitation programs. Madison began her new academic cycle with full financial support and a secured internship placement. Angela finished the semester balancing work, exams, and exhaustion until one unexpected opportunity changed her routine completely. The foundation offered her a formal administrative position, not because of Ethan, not because of sympathy, but because her experience, ongoing accounting studies, and first-hand understanding of the institution's failures made her uniquely qualified. Still, Angela resisted at first. I don't want anyone saying I benefited because of you. Ethan respected that immediately. And only after independent interviews, resume evaluations, and approval from multiple board members did Angela finally accept the role. The day she signed the contract, she looked directly into Ethan's eyes inside the conference room. If there had been shortcuts involved, she said calmly, I wouldn't have accepted. Ethan answered with equal seriousness, and I would never respect you less for that. Little by little, their relationship found its own mature rhythm, short dinners after her evening classes, long conversations about work, family, responsibility, and future plans. Real disagreements too, because Angela never agreed simply to please someone. And Ethan gradually learned that disagreement was not disrespect. One afternoon, Angela suggested he begin visiting foundation departments unexpectedly instead of relying only on reports again. If this place depends entirely on conference rooms, she warned him, eventually everything falls apart all over again. Ethan listened and started doing exactly that. Later, he encouraged her to finish her accounting degree through the company's educational assistance program. Angela only accepted after verifying the benefit existed equally for every employee under identical requirements. Nothing between them was built on emotional debt. That was exactly what made it strong. Nearly a year later, the foundation officially relaunched its social programs during a modest public ceremony. No extravagant decorations, no performances designed for cameras, just students, families, donors, and employees gathered inside the renovated hall. When Ethan spoke at the podium, he kept his speech short. He thanked the board, the staff, the families who trusted the institution again, and especially the people brave enough to tell the truth when silence would have been easier. He never mentioned Angela dramatically, but everyone there knew exactly who he meant. After the event ended, Angela stood several feet away quietly watching students take photographs, while parents held approval envelopes with trembling hands. Ethan approached her carefully. Do you see all this? He asked softly. Angela nodded. I do. He looked around the hall thoughtfully. It started that day inside the mansion. Angela turned toward him. No, she corrected gently. It started the moment you decided to listen. Ethan smiled faintly. And it continued because you decided to stay. This time her smile carried no exhaustion behind it. I stayed because this time it was worth it. Later that evening, they returned briefly to the mansion to collect historical documents that would be archived inside the foundation's memory center. The grand hall stood silent, exactly like the day everything began, the blue staircase in the background, the polished marble, floors, the same place, a completely different story. Angela stopped in the middle of the room and slowly looked around. It happened here. Ethan nodded beside her. It did. Then after a pause, he asked quietly, what if I had kept walking that day? Angela turned toward him with the same steady honesty she had always carried from the beginning. You would have stayed rich and empty. Her eyes softened slightly, and I would have stayed strong and exhausted. Then she stepped closer, and both would have lost. Ethan gently took both of her hands. His voice lowered naturally. I don't want another life where you aren't part of it. For the first time, Angela allowed tears to remain visible without trying to hide them. There was no humiliation between them anymore. No fear, no social distance. Only truth. Then don't build one, she whispered. Ethan pulled her into his arms right there in the center of the hall where everything had once fallen apart. And inside that embrace, there were no empty promises left, only a future already tested by everything they had survived together. Sometime later, when they finally walked out of the mansion side by side, the foundation was standing stronger than before. Madison had a future. Angela had her name restored, her work respected, and an honest love beside her. And Ethan finally understood something that changed his life forever. The greatest transformation he ever experienced was not losing a marriage built on appearances. It was finding the courage to choose truth after years of silence. A truth that began with a quiet housekeeper standing alone in a marble hall and ended with two people walking forward together, lighter, stronger, and finally at peace.